It's no longer news that people all over the world are getting poorer. Hey, you might even be one of those who have been forced to battle economic situations out of their control. The funny thing about situations like these is that they affect everyone. Yes, everyone. Countries too. In fact, the United Kingdom is facing a debt problem that will have you thinking, maybe my Uncle Richard with debt issues isn't that bad. At the end of this video, you will have a pretty solid idea of why Britain might become a third world country if they aren't careful. The national debt of the United Kingdom is so huge that it is now estimated to be the same as its actual economic revenue. This is the first time this has happened since the country made a surprising recovery from its World War II debts. Britain owes a staggering amount of around £2.57 trillion, and it still borrows up to £20 billion a year to cover up its deficits. There is only one way this road is taking them, and it doesn't look nice. As interest rates go up, paying off debts becomes more expensive. Think about it. For every £100 a Brit pays in taxes, £10 is used to pay interest on what the country owes. That's a big chunk of money. Is this really the best way to spend it? For the last few decades, as the West's debts kept growing, economists have told us not to worry, to battle the rising debt. They came up with this idea called modern monetary theory. Basically, it says that countries can borrow as much as they want, because they can just print more money to pay it back. And that's kind of what the Bank of England, US Federal Reserve, and European Central Bank have been doing with something called quantitative easing. But in recent times, we are beginning to see that debt does matter. People who lend money to the government want higher interest rates. The £110 billion the UK spends on interest every year could be used to double the state pension for everyone. And that's just the beginning of their debt problems. Let's hit that like button for this video and subscribe to our channel for more amazings in the future. Welcome to Money Minded World. When COVID hit, Western countries were already deep in debt. Suddenly, then-Chancellor Rishi Sunak found a lot of money and used it for lockdowns. It felt good at first, seeing all that cash. But now we're in even more trouble. When people are in debt, they often dream of quick solutions. They might buy lottery tickets, invest in risky things like Bitcoin, or come up with impossible business ideas. The UK had its own problem with Liz Truss, who thought she could borrow more money and get rich through tax cuts. But within days, it almost caused a disaster. Debt can break up families, and the same thing happens to countries. Citizens can end up fighting for a long time over who gets which slice of the pie. Will it be pensioners, people on benefits, young workers, kids, roads, schools, defense, or healthcare? Then they will also argue about who should pay for all that and which taxes should go up. If the Labour Party takes control, they might fight among themselves over how hard it is to tax the rich and who counts as rich. It's a challenging situation that the UK is headed into, and it doesn't look pretty at all. The British national debt has a rich history dating back to the era of William III. He enlisted a group of city traders and merchants to sell government debt, a precursor to the establishment of the Bank of England. By 1815, post the Napoleonic Wars, the debt had swollen to £1 billion, surpassing 200% of the GDP. In the early 1900s, the debt was reduced to around 30% of GDP, yet World War I prompted hefty government borrowing, causing the deficit to surge from £650 million in 1914 to a staggering £7.4 billion in 1919. A similar trajectory unfolded during World War II. Post-wars, the debt gradually receded in proportion to the economy, but the 1970s sterling crisis led to a plea from the International Monetary Fund. The 1980s and 1990s witnessed a fluctuating debt-to-GDP ratio, with a dip in the 1980s followed by a resurgence in the early 1990s due to a recession. The late 1990s and early 2000s saw a decline, reaching 29% of GDP by 2002. However, despite economic growth, the national debt started climbing again as the Labour government, led by Tony Blair, upped public spending. By 2007, the national debt stood at 37% of GDP. Post the 2008 Great Recession, both government borrowing and the national debt soared, hitting around 70% of GDP by the close of 2012. Reflecting on its roots, the British national debt took root during William III's reign. His initiative to sell government debt laid the foundation for the Bank of England. In 1694, Charles Montague, the first Earl of Halifax, formalized the bank based on a plan proposed by William Paterson 3 years prior. This marked the beginning of a financial institution that would become very involved in the fabric of politics and war, steering the course of the British national debt for decades to come. In a pretty bold move, Montague pitched the idea of loaning about £1.2 billion to the government. Because the government's piggy bank was running low, the loan terms were steep. They were charging 8% per year, plus an extra £4,000 annually for babysitting the loan. Sir John Houblon, the first governor of the bank, even got his face on the £50 note in 1994. When the Bank of England came onto the scene, it shut down financial mishaps like the Great Stop of the Exchequer in 1672. The Brits promised to always pay back what they owed. By 1776, a good chunk of the national debt and major stocks were in the hands of Dutch bankers. Fast forward to 1815, after the Napoleonic Wars, the British government owed a whopping £1 billion, which was more than double the GDP. By the early 1900s, though, the national debt was hanging around 30% of GDP. Then World War I came along, and the Brits had to break open the piggy bank big time. The national debt went from £650 million in 1914 to a crazy £7.4 billion in 1919. The Brits borrowed a bunch from the US during World War I, and even after President Herbert Hoover hit a pause on repayments in 1931, Britain still had a tab of $4.4 billion in World War I debt by 1934. In today's money, that's around £40 billion, or £225 billion if you factor in how much the British economy has grown. During the Great Depression, Britain tapped out on those payments, and just as you might have guessed, the loans are still hanging over their heads. By the mid-1920s, interest on government debt was absorbing 44% of all government expenditure, comfortably exceeding spending on defense until 1937, when, as war clouds drew near, rearmament began to get underway in earnest. During World War II, the British government found itself compelled to secure substantial loans to fund its war efforts against the Axis powers. By the war's conclusion, Britain's debt had soared to over 200% of its GDP, echoing a pattern observed after the Napoleonic Wars. Much like during World War I, the United States emerged as the primary source of financial support, providing assistance through low-interest loans and the Lend-Lease Act. Post-war, as Lend-Lease concluded, Britain still faced the challenge of meeting its financial obligations, including repayments and the importation of essential goods. With industrial production redirected for wartime needs, export sales were insufficient to cover these expenses. In 1946, Britain sought a loan of $586 million and an additional $3.7 billion line of credit. Canada contributed $1.19 billion at a 2% annual interest rate. This debt was structured to be repaid over 50 years, starting in 1950. Some of these loans were only fully settled in the early 21st century, with Britain making final payments to the US and Canada on December 31, 2006. By the end of World War II, Britain faced a staggering debt of £21 billion, much of it owed to foreign entities, particularly the US, constituting around one-third of its annual GDP. While the post-war era witnessed a gradual reduction in the debt-to-GDP ratio, a significant economic challenge arose in 1976, when a sterling crisis prompted Prime Minister James Callaghan to seek a record-breaking £2.3 billion rescue package from the International Monetary Fund. Everyone thought this would be the end of their financial woes, but it was only the beginning. Since 2008, a pivotal year marking the onset of economic challenges for the British economy, the nation has experienced a profound transformation. The recession, triggered by an external financial crisis, set off a chain of events that significantly escalated the national debt. Initially, vast sums were injected into bank bailouts, and subsequently, the decline in tax revenue from personal income and commercial activities further contributed to the escalating debt. Reflecting on the 2 decades leading up to 2006-07, government spending in the United Kingdom hovered at an average of approximately 40% of GDP. However, the 2007-2010 financial crisis and the subsequent global recession saw a historic surge in government spending, reaching an unprecedented 48% of GDP in 2009. This increase was in part a consequence of the substantial costs incurred from a series of bank bailouts. In July 2007, the government debt stood at 35.5% of GDP, soaring to 56.8% by July 2009. Fast forward to June 2023, and the British national debt has reached a staggering 100.1% of GDP. Public sector net debt as of May 2023 is recorded as £2,567,200,000,000. The once mighty British Empire, which stood as a global powerhouse, now finds itself submerged in a sea of colossal failure. The pillars of economy, politics, housing, and inflation are crumbling, rendering the empire's influence irrelevant. The question that echoes through time is whether the UK can weather these pressures or succumb to the shadows of oblivion. This unfolding saga is living history, a stark contrast to the enduring 400-year legacy of the British Empire. In just over a decade, Britain has undergone a profound transformation, fading into a mere shadow of its former self. Despite 30 years of conservative government leadership, the UK seems caught in a quagmire of inaction. The question lingers: does the current leadership possess the means to restore the UK to its former glory? Or is this a tale of irreversible decline, marking the end of an era for a once mighty empire? Only time will unveil the fate of a nation grappling with the weight of its own history. Let us know in the comments if you think Britain would be able to bounce back from this decline. As always, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel for more updates. Catch you next time.